All the way back in 2004, my mother unknowingly made a decision that would absolutely guarantee I'd spend the vast majority of my early adult years flat broke. You see, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was coming out, and to say I was hyped would be an understatement. But I wasn't alone. Everyone was looking forward to this game. There was people trying to escape North Korea, families be damned, just to get a look at CJ's fat mechanics. It was huge. And when the day of release finally came, I sprinted my fluffy booty down to the local game shop because good old Mammy Duck had pre-ordered it for me as an early birthday present. So 13-year-old me got to the counter and said, "One of your finest 18 rated games, my good man, and be quick about it, I have a pint waiting on me." And he said, "No problem, sir." It was a different time. And it was finally there, right in front of me, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. A game that would be one of the few things in my teens that had any chance of dragging me away from the legwork of puberty. Only problem was, he had brought out a PS2 copy, and I didn't have a PS2 anymore because the one we did have had lost its glasses or something because I wasn't reading discs anymore. And my mother handled this like any struggling single mother would. She brought it at the back and had it shot in front of the window as if to send a message to all the other appliances in the house thinking of acting up. Then she replaced it with an entirely different console called an Xbox. It was this seemingly small decision that changed the course of my financial life because of what the cashier said next. "San Andreas is only on PS2. Yeah, it turned out it was one of those games that was exclusive to a console upon release, but I'd never considered that because I was so used to having a PS2, and everything was on the PS2. Final Fantasy, Metal Gear, you name it. Now this of course had me feeling like an orphan at a parent-teacher meeting. What was I to do? So in an attempt to salvage the day, I asked if anything else had come out on the Xbox for that day, and there was. A street racing game called Need for Speed Underground 2. So I bought that, brought it home, and did my absolute best to convince myself that it was a great game, which wasn't hard actually because it was. Normal cars you could realistically own in real life and you can customize them how you like. An open world, that was rare back then. Great soundtrack. This game was such a blast that it unlocked my love for tuner cars, ensuring that I'd end up spending every last spare penny I had in them for the better part of my early adulthood. Wow, I forgot how red that was. Went a little bit overboard in the paint on that one. Kinda painful to look at. So flash forward a few years later. I was 18, I had gotten my provisional license, and I had started a job in a town over. So it was finally time to get some wheels under me. Thing is, I didn't have a car. And even though I had a license, I didn't know how to drive. Yeah, it's kind of weird that you don't need to know how to drive whatsoever to get on the road in Ireland. You just had to answer a couple of questions and you got it. What does it mean when this is red? It's hot. F*** it, close enough. Pilot's license, yeah? So I got lessons then, right? Did I fuck? I could barely afford petrol, much less lessons. I learned to drive in a sketchier manner. In the dead of night on a country road in constant evasion of the authorities because I wasn't insured in my older brother's car, so we were both fucked if we were caught. Now, seeing as I was on minimum wage and couldn't exactly afford to buy a car, but still needed transport to work, the mother not really using it much, lent me her car until I managed to save up enough money for my own. It was a 1 litre, slurry green, 1995 Nissan Micra, or the fanny wagon as I would later start ironically calling it, because it was the wetting knickers as a bucket of sand is to stoking a fire. Pretty much became my car for a while because it was hard to save since my insurance on the Micra was $2,500, which is only 3.5 times the car's total fucking value. But before long, I was out on my own patrolling the streets for flange. Now, just because I knew how to drive doesn't mean I started off any good at it. I drove like I was leading a funeral, I shit myself every time I entered the city, and my clutch control was so bad that my mother would nickname my takeoffs as the kangaroo dance. But the most memorable fuck-up moment I had in that Micra happened about 2 weeks into driving. So I was on my own, driving down a nice quiet country road, loving life and my newfound freedom. There was quite a sharp turn coming up though, so I started to slow down when suddenly, boom! I was thrown forward in the seat, headbutting the steering wheel and scaring the shite out of me. I didn't know what just happened. I looked back the road to see if I hit anything, but there was nothing there, and all the wheels were still attached. So a bit shaken and curious to see if the car still worked, I decided to drive the car down the road and find a better spot to park. Went to put the car in first gear, and it was already in first gear. You see, ladies and laddies, what had happened was, when slowing down for the bend, I downshifted from 5th into 3rd. But being the bright spark that I am, I somehow missed 3rd and slapped it directly into 1st, which as soon as I took my foot off the clutch, caused the car to engine brake, throwing me forward in the seat, which wouldn't be so bad on its own, but the lurching forward caused me to unknowingly press the brake, which with the force I was carrying at this stage, might as well have been labelled headbutt the steering wheel, and this brought the car to a screeching stop, leaving me dazed and confused in the middle of the road. Eventually I became more comfortable with driving thanks to many late nights driving for the sake of it, and getting with the quality gals in Nissan Micra. Actually, you know what? Never mind that. And now that I was able to get to work, I was getting paid, which you know what that means, right? Ditch your little shitbox and get yourself something nicer with a bit more power? Fuck that. I love that little Micra. Yeah, it was slow. Yeah, the gear stick was the length of a chair leg. And yes, it was the most scary car I've ever driven at top speed. Seriously, 104 miles an hour, this thing rattled like a galvanized shed in a hurricane. It was terrifying. I'm surprised they don't use that as a fear tactic to train spec ops. And for the final test, you can either have these jumper cables attached to your chin warmers, or get in this Micra and drive as fast as possible. Yeah, I'm gonna stop you there. But for all its faults, it was good on petrol, you could park it in somebody's pocket, and it never gave me trouble. It's the most reliable car I've ever owned to this day. So I did what every car lover does with a crap car and a few pound. I bought some tacky aftermarket parts. First up was seat covers, but not just any seat covers. No. These were blue down the centre, so at a distance you'd almost fool a very short-sighted person looking the other way into thinking you had sporty seats. That wasn't even the best part. Wait until you hear this. They had a fucking dragon on them. How cool is that? People say it's tacky, but are you really going to listen to their opinion when they don't even have a dragon on their seats? Like, come on. The second thing I was sporting was 3 of the sportiest hubcaps you ever did see. It was 4 hubcaps for 7 seconds, but I left my younger brother parked the car, completely forgetting what younger brothers are like. Did you park it okay?
Depends, are you going to check it?
You broke one of the hubcaps, didn't you?
Sure did. I also scratched a load of your Xbox games because I've refused to put them back in the box when I want to use it, and I accidentally dropped your PSP in the toilet. Later, nerd.
But my favourite modification is best revealed in a story the boys told me. You see, they were hanging out at a local garage talking about fannies when they could hear a clearly tuned car drawn in from the distance. So being avid car lads themselves, they all decided to guess what it might be coming.
That's an SIR Civic, I reckon.
Nah, Civic is more exhaust heavy. I reckon that's a 180SX. You're both wrong. That's a Boxster engine. That's definitely a WRX Scooby. Then they suddenly get their answer. Yep, in a desperate pursuit to try make my little chicken chaser fast, I had slapped on an induction kit, which ended up being an endless source of hilarity for the boys anytime I'd cruise past. Did it make the car faster? Probably not. If anything, it might have slowed the car down. But what man isn't weak to the sound of a roaring engine? Oh, sweet mother of God. Who cares that I was barely moving fast enough to overtake walkers? When I pulled up next to a mobility scooter, they knew who the Alpha was. I'm exaggerating a bit. Honestly, the Micra had a 16-valve twin-cam engine and weighed about as much as Jada Pinkett Smith's shampoo bottle, so it was surprisingly nippy for a 1 litre. Box. But for me, it was never the speed, the looks, or the freedom that made me love this car so much. It was that I was proud of my little shitbox. Because at the time, I was surrounded by lads my own age, if not younger, driving A86s, Type R Integras, Evos, S15s, all talking big, swinging their dicks, surrounded by girls as rough as the roads, smirking to themselves like cats that got the cream, looking down their noses at anything less than 150 horsepower like you just rolled into a high society ball on the back of a sulky, not realising that it was all the broke f***ers out there barely scraping by with their 2-stroke lunchboxes who felt sorry on them. Because we knew when their parents' funds dried up, life and all its financial hardships would hit them like a fucking freight train. And once they have to finally learn how to walk, we'll already be hitting our stride. The only difference is we'd never judge them for driving an embarrassing car, because we all know the real embarrassment is having mammy and daddy pay for your flashy sports car and footing the bill for the astronomical insurance that comes with that so their adult child can win a popularity contest. Because that's all it was back then. They were the fitness influencer who secretly took steroids. They were the online entrepreneur who was actually broke. And though it wasn't flashy or fast, this little fanny wagon did exactly what anybody's first car should do. It did the fucking job. So, there you have it. That was my first car. I eventually saved up enough dosh to buy another car that had some stories of its own, but that's a story for another time. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing, and I will catch you lads and ladies in the next one.